Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. Let's talk about, you tweeted, Nathan Wade controversy may cause ethical problems for Fani Willis, but it has no relevance to the guilt or innocence of Trump and his co-defendants. This just, I don't know. It feels like, first of all, he's got an entire political party as part of his defense team, just going after whatever prosecutors. I mean, it seems when I've seen her speak about this, this just seems patently unfair. That she paid this guy the same as the other prosecutors, but they're going to make an issue out of everything, I suppose. What is your take on that?
I think this is one of those places where we have to be able to hold two ideas in our heads at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That is, we don't know all the facts of Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. I note that she has not denied it, and so it sounds like perhaps there is a romantic relationship there. Right. If there is some ethical standard that she violated by failing to disclose an intimate relationship or making improper payments, I've not seen evidence of that yet, that there are improper payments. It sounds like she paid a very good lawyer the very same rate that she pays other people to come in from the outside to help her team, and that he is a very prominent lawyer in Georgia. So she may or may not. That's on one hand. Maybe she's got ethical issues here that will be dealt with by the Georgia bar.
Yeah.
On the other hand, something very different, which is the guilt or innocence of Donald Trump and his co-defendants.
Yeah.
That has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Right.
And so this case will proceed to court. None of this information about whether there is or isn't an improper relationship with a prosecutor will be in front of a jury. No one will hear about it, and jurors will be asked to decide the case based on the evidence against Trump and others. But is this an effort to taint the potential jury pool? You bet.
Yeah.
And all they need is one juror in there to say, I refuse to convict because I think this is all tainted or whatever, or political witch hunt, whatever it is, and get a hung jury. So I think that, again, this is a political crusade to try to dirty up the prosecutor in any way they can to try to harm the prosecution.
Yeah. Well, so a hearing has been set for February 15 to examine these accusations. But let's put all the prosecutors on trial. Okay. It all hinges. This book you've written is so interesting. Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. This is such an important book to write right now, Barb, because as we keep saying, all of these lies, when they're meeting the light of a courtroom, right, where facts, are supposed to rule, they don't stand up, right? Whether it's the E. Jean Carroll case or Rudy Giuliani or Fox News. I mean, that should be the rule. You can't lie. You can't keep doing deliberate disinformation and pay no price.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that my book will help just open people's eyes to how this game is being played. It's been used by strongmen for centuries, and their tactics, and they play on cognitive forces to push us to believe things that are simply not true. But I remain hopeful, Stephanie, that court is the place where truth still matters, where people are under oath, where fact finders make findings, and you can't get away with, the kind of word salad that Donald Trump engages in. So I'm hopeful that he will be held accountable. He's already been held accountable in some instances, the first E. Jean Carroll trial, and that kind of thing, gives me hope that these other trials will also bring justice to Donald Trump and his disinformation game.
In addition to being a fantastic lawyer, I know you are a very nice person. How bad a lawyer is Alina Habba? If you had to... I mean, has she never been in a courtroom? I don't understand.
Yeah, and so, one question I've heard is she really that inept, or is this all part of Donald Trump's strategy? And I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little of both. But... I think some of it, she's asking all kinds of questions that are irrelevant, but I think it's deliberate. I think a big part of this case is it's all just PR strategy. They know they're going to lose. They know they're going to lose big. And so there's a lot of victim blaming going on, a lot of asking really inappropriate questions. I'm sure she knows that. And she's asking them anyway, because it's all part of the strategy to say the judge silenced us and shut us down and wouldn't let us ask these questions. So, there are times when she isn't able to answer ask a very straightforward question. So I think she's a bit inept. But I also think this is part of the strategy is, play dumb and just ask all kinds of inappropriate questions, because that will be the news of the day.
Well, yeah. And as basically what you're saying, Barb, it's not a legal strategy. It's a political strategy that must be, I guess, to defend her from it must be terrible to be his lawyer, because you're like, that's not a sound legal strategy. You just want me to do political talking points.
Yeah, I think she's obviously made peace with that, that's the strategy here.
Yeah.
It's all about preserving his political base, regardless of what comes in court. And, no ethical lawyer would do that. And yet here we have Lena Haba do that. And I will repeat, no ethical lawyer would do that.
Yeah. So let's go to obviously the big one. Trump has filed a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court in his attempt to prevent being disqualified from the presidential election. He believes he's immune from prosecution, that the 14th Amendment insurrection clause doesn't involve the presidency because he's not an officer of the United States, which I believe is the opposite of what he argued in another case. Not important now.
Right.
Even if President Trump were subject to Section 3, he did not engage in anything that qualifies as an insurrection, the filing reads. I've heard you in the liberal loop that I live in. I had Lawrence O'Donnell on yesterday. Then I watched you on Lawrence O'Donnell before I went to sleep, before I get to talk to you about it this morning in my liberal bubble.
Yeah.
But so I've heard you talk about the Supreme Court before, but talk about this in particular and the Supreme Court immunity stuff in general.
This issue of the insurrection clause, right? It's on its way to the Supreme Court. Donald Trump filed his brief last night. I think there are some hard issues here. There are questions that have never been answered by anybody, and the Supreme Court is going to answer these questions. On the merits, they have to answer, number one, did Donald Trump engage in insurrection? Was there an insurrection, and did he participate in it? I think most of us watching would say yes, but when it was written, it was all about, did you join up for the Confederacy and fight in the Civil War? It applies to any future insurrection. The question is, does this meet that definition, and did Donald Trump's conduct, is that sufficient to have engaged in it? Those are some questions. There's also some question as to whether he is an officer of the United States for those purposes. I think the answer to that question is absolutely yes. But then there's some other legal questions that I think provide off-ramps for the Supreme Court that they might be very tempted to take. One of them is, this is a question not for the courts, but a question for Congress to decide whether he did engage in insurrection or whether he's eligible. Congress is allowed to eliminate this barrier with a 2/3 vote. And so does that mean that it's Congress who has to make this finding? I think that's one area where the Supreme Court make a decision. Donald Trump has a really interesting argument too, in addition to all of these. One is that, hey, if we're going to be textualist, let's look at the text. It says I can't hold office. It doesn't say I can't run for office. It doesn't say I can't seek office. So it's premature to decide this. So I could run, be elected, and then not until January 20th of 2025 would we say, sorry, not eligible. Maybe that's a technical reading of it, but that would be absurd, right? To say, let's have this big election and vote for somebody and elect them who's not eligible to hold the seat. Right. Seems like you ought to know that before you cast your ballot.
Yeah, that's okay. Even I would get that right in the blue book. Yeah. Okay. There it is, my first drink of the day, ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Many of you know my story. I stopped drinking wine for 3 years during COVID, during the lockdown as part of a health reset. Now I drink wine in moderation, but this is an amazing new product. I've always believed in probiotics. And ZBiotics, check this out. You drink just one of these. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I am using this and I feel great in the morning. I don't have to worry if I have an extra glass of wine, I still feel great in the morning. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. I've always had acid reflux problems. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. All I know is it works. It is ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Go to zbiotics.com/politicalvoices or scan the QR code on the screen right now.